Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Ohio Has Issues. I'm Stephanie Haney.
I'm Mike Polk, and you are watching our show about Ohio politics.
On this pre-July 4th day, because we fought for the right to have our own issues here in Ohio.
That's right.
We're going to celebrate it.
And we're still fighting to this day. And we're going to help you learn more about what's going on in your state right now, especially because we have this big election coming up, as you probably know, in November, with national repercussions, because we are going to be determining, probably determining the balance of the Senate here in Ohio. It's very close.
Yeah, it's a main issue. So, each week we give you an update on the Senate race. So we'll certainly do that. We'll kind of tell you what we know, what we've been seeing going on there. We're also going to talk a little bit more about recreational marijuana, which is something everybody's always gets a little bit lit up about.
Hey, look what you did there. And then we're also going to be talking, the redistricting amendment. Mm-hmm. That's going to make it on the ballot, folks. It looks like we got a signature update for you. Andrew Tobias from Cleveland.com and Plain Dealer. I speak with him, and he'll tell us about our effort to make these districts more fair in Ohio.
Yeah, so we still got to, cross some T's and dot some I's, but there was a major development there, so we'll talk about that. And we'll give you a quick update here in just a minute or two on the House Bill 6 drama that continues to just kind of grab everybody's attention here in the state of Ohio.
And we have a little bit of Ohio news that's related to the presidential race, so we're going to talk about that as well. But first, this is huge. Well, it's not really. The Libertarians are on the ballot in Ohio, which is great for them. They got enough signatures. They turned in 88,000 signatures, the Ohio Libertarians, so they can legally be on the presidential ballot now.
As long as it gets certified,
As long as it gets certified. 42,000 of those have to be legal, so it would be pretty crazy if more than half were bad. But yeah, it could happen. Their presidential nominee is Chase Oliver. As soon as you're on the party, it does give you certain benefits as far as you can hold your own primaries and stuff like that, and you do get some funding from the party. So the other thing is that we had this happen 4 years ago. The Libertarians were on there then. They had a candidate named Joe Jorgensen as their presidential candidate, and he brought in 1.1% of the vote. So if Chase can reach those Jorgensen numbers, then he can make a little noise in Ohio.
You never know.
It's good to see another party on the ballot, isn't it?
I am always excited about participation in the process.
The most fun thing about it is sometimes once you're considered a party, an actual party candidate, they get to participate in some of the stuff that usually only the Democrat and the Republican do, which means you get to watch a dude with dreadlocks be in a debate. From the Green Party, but he's up there with two guys with suits, and he's got a hacky sack and stuff like that, and they hate that he gets to be up there with them. And so I hope. And I don't know. I'm not saying that Connor Oliver is that kind of guy, but I'm just excited that we have a little more representation for parties. That's good.
Yeah. So, and also another little note about the presidential race, in case you watched the presidential debate or did not watch the presidential debate last week, there's been a lot of conversation about the performances that happened at that debate. Some people are now calling for President Joe Biden to actually withdraw from the nomination. So we did see a comment, though, from an Ohio leader within the Democratic Party. So I wanted to share that. This is from an AP article from July 1st, basically summarizing it as the feeling that it's just absolutely hypothetical and completely ridiculous that Biden would resign. Bill DeMora, who's the convention director for the Ohio Democratic Party, said, quote, "It's a typical Democratic overreacting." So that's his opinion as a leader here in Ohio on that.
All right. Well, what do we got for him next year?
All right, let's get to the second item in our Ohio Roundup, an update on House Bill 6. This is from some Ohio Capitol Journal reporting, and the most recent update is that Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted has enthusiastically denied prior knowledge of the largest bribery scheme in state history. Now, this is after Ohio Capitol Journal and other outlets reported about text messages that were discovered between then FirstEnergy executives Chuck Jones and Mike Dowling, and also Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted and Governor Mike DeWine when they were candidates for the governorship back in 2018.
And just a reminder, we're getting all this information now, this new information, because it's discovery from a lawsuit being filed by some of the people from FirstEnergy, the shareholders, against the company. And that's why we now have access to a lot of these text messages that we didn't have before, and they're still unfurling them.
Yeah, and apparently, according to the article, Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted was aggravated by follow-up questions asking how it was possible that he wouldn't know about the bribery scheme, given the fact that he was communicating with these former executives, again, Chuck Jones and Mike Dowling, who are now criminally indicted in the state of Ohio, and also advocating for House Bill 6, which is the bill that is kind of at the center of all of this.
Both Husted and Governor DeWine they're on the witness list for Mike Dowling's defense. Now, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be called, but they are at least, they're on the list, so that could happen.
Which is an interesting point to note because we have heard from Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted's office, and they made it a point to point out that he's not been questioned in any regard about this, but if he is called as a witness, then of course he would have been formally questioned in a court under oath. So if you want to read a recap of those text messages, which I recommend that you do, you can do that on the Ohio Capitol Journal website. But I do want to share a couple notable quotes from a Case Western Reserve University School of Law professor, Mike Benza. He was actually on the show with us last week.
Yep.
So here are those quotes from him.
You can read these texts and say, this is nothing but politics as usual, or you can read them and say, they know what they're doing and they're speaking in code in order to avoid the smoking gun.
He went on to say it's either DeWine was clueless about what was going on both in the State House but even within his own administration, which doesn't look good, or he knew what was going on, which makes him guilty.
And then finally,
the lieutenant governor has that same problem, and some of these text messages may make it even worse for him, that it appears that they targeted him as the person to do this in order to insulate Governor DeWine from any issue. Yep. And again, if you haven't read the text messages, I highly recommend it.
It's good reading. Good 4th of July reading. Why not?
Sure,
Check it out.
Under the fireworks.
Yeah, amen.
All right, Mike, give us the update on what's going on with our senatorial candidates. As a reminder, our current Ohio senator in Congress is Sherrod Brown. He's a Democrat. He'll be running against Bernie Moreno. Against him, he is a Republican.
And he's one of two Democrats who are up for re-election in the Senate in states that Donald Trump won, the other being Jon Tester in Montana. So they're very important races. A lot of money is going to be spent in these races, but really not too much so far. It's been relatively quiet ever since businessman Bernie Moreno won the primary. And he's kind of been laying low, doing some fundraisers, both of them have, but they're about to pick it up apparently, according to both campaigns.
Okay.
Now, Moreno, he did win the primary in March, as you know, and a lot of the money that he's been raising for at fundraisers and stuff has gone towards paying back his campaign because he had some debt coming out of that. But we're looking at outside spending coming in. They're saying within the next month, about $200 million in outside advertising that it's going to be hitting. You're going to be seeing it all the time. Right now, you might just get like one commercial during Wheel of Fortune or whatever, folks at home. Pretty soon, those things are going to be spinning like crazy. All right.
Yeah. Get ready.
You spoke about the debate, the presidential debate that we had last week. A lot of strong responses and reactions to that. You've probably heard one or two. We thought we'd look for one from each of our Senate candidates to see what they had to say. Let's first look at Bernie Moreno's response. And this one kind of hits close to home because, look, it actually involves you, Stephanie. They grabbed a clip from Sherrod Brown when he was being interviewed by you. And in which he said,
For the 3 Things to Know podcast.
Yes, for the 3 Things to Know podcast. And he said, quote, Joe Biden's politics are not that much different than mine. They selectively grabbed that 7-second thing, and Bernie Moreno tweeted that back out the night of the debate and said, think about the Joe Biden you saw tonight. That's who Sherrod Brown supports for president and votes with 99% of the time. So, obviously a selective quote, obviously trying very hard to link his rival to the president and what is considered to be a bad debate night.
And also, we should note it because we do talk about context and timing here. That interview with Sherrod Brown was before Biden took the presidency, before he actually was inaugurated. So a couple years ago.
That seems pretty relevant. Okay. So that's Bernie Moreno. As for Senator Sherrod Brown, he did not really respond to that. He made an appearance in Cleveland on Friday, and he did not take any questions about the debate or whether he had concerns. Also should be noted that a New York Times columnist suggested Sherrod Brown as a possible replacement for President Joe Biden if they decided to go that route. He completely shot that down and said he has no interest in that. That would also I don't even know what that suggestion was about. Wouldn't make sense at any level because obviously if he stepped down, then the governor of Ohio would get to choose his replacement. My guess is he's going to choose a Republican, so I don't know if the Democrats would make that choice.
Yeah, especially given the importance of the Senate race in Ohio in terms of the balance of power in the Senate.
Now,
I don't really see that happening, but that's interesting.
We don't have much polling on this race, but we do have the collective polling from Real Clear Politics so far of the very, not much polling, I said, that they have had so far, that they've done so far in this campaign. This is a summary of Real Clear Politics based on a number of polls, but all of these polls, as you can see from this graphic, 3 of them were done in March, and only one was done in June. So a lot can have changed, obviously. According to the June poll, though, right now Sherrod Brown is enjoying a 5-point lead, according to that Marist poll. But that was pre-debate. That was June 6, things change. But overall, it's just like a real lack of polling that's been a problem. And I'm not sure why that is exactly, for considering how important this race is. But if we get any new polls, we'll share them with you.
We sure will. Okay, so here in Ohio, a big ticket item that we almost certainly expect to see on the November ballot, of course, again, we know there's some administrative things that have to happen, is this citizen-initiated amendment for redistricting.
We're very excited about this, and I think this thing's going to get through. I'm unabashedly excited. I think it'll be great for the state because I think that people should be deciding their districts rather than politicians. In fact, I think we've heard that slogan before from the citizens, not politicians, who are pushing for this. And they hit a real milestone this week. We got reporting from Andrew Tobias that it seems like they got enough signatures, and we're going to see this on the ballot. I spoke with Cleveland.com's Andrew Tobias about it. Here he is to fill you in. Hey, everybody, check out. It's Andrew Tobias from Cleveland.com. Thanks for your time, sir.
Hey, no problem.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Ready for the 4th of July.
Heck yeah, we are. Celebrate our nation's independence. Any big plans?
Just involving kids and family and grilling. I'm a dad now, so that's just like my personality trait.
I am not a dad, so I'm filling in for all the dads at work so you guys can go on barbecues.
Excellent. Thank
Enjoy
you for your
yourself.
service. Sure.
But you are still working up until the day, and you had some great reporting this week talking about the redistricting reform that is underway, or at least the attempted redistricting reform. And it sounds like we might have ourselves a ballot initiative based on the number of signatures turned in. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, the number they turned in is roughly 730,000, and they need something like 413,000. We used to see campaigns like this submit basically twice as many. Like the rule of thumb was that as much as half of them might be wrong or might be invalid for reasons like maybe somebody signed the petition twice, maybe somebody signed the petition and then moved so the address doesn't match voter files and stuff like that. But campaigns have gotten a lot more sophisticated about kind of pre-checking that themselves. And so kind of based on the numbers they submitted, they submitted more signatures than the abortion rights campaign did last year when they qualified for the ballot. And so just recent precedent says they're likely to qualify. But what has to happen next is that elections officials and all the different counties where these signatures came from are going to look at them, make sure the signatures and information match what they have on file, and we'll find out in a few weeks whether or not they're going to qualify.
Now, whose job is that specifically to oversee that? Who's actually going through those over 700,000 signatures to check and see if the addresses are right and everybody crossed all their T's and dotted all the I's?
So the good thing about Ohio's election system is that it's run.
There's a good thing about Ohio's election system?
It's a really good thing. It's run at the local level by county boards of election, and by law, there has to be a Republican and a Democrat doing pretty much any job. They basically watch each other. And so some counties, there's like 4 people, but in counties like Cuyahoga County, there are many people. They're going to check the signatures and just do the checking that I suggested. But sometimes I'll hear, let's say Frank LaRose comes out against the redistricting amendment, which he hasn't yet. People have doubts about whether or not the system is impartial, but it is done at the local level, at a bipartisan level. And so people can have more confidence that it's being done fairly and correctly.
Now, you were actually there for the unloading of the boxes. What was the vibe like at this event?
Oh, just thrilling. If anybody's ever, driven a U-Haul and done like an 8-point turn to try to back it in exactly the right way, it's just, high drama. But people were excited. It's been a lot of work to get here. This redistricting movement has been going on for like 25 years. There was a failed reform a couple of times, and then one passed in 2015 and one passed in 2018, and that had buy-in from Democrats and Republicans and business groups, passed with like 75% of the vote. But these activists who are part of this feel that the system failed because it kept elected officials in charge who have self-interest in play when they're drawing these maps, including their own parties that they represent. So I would say that a lot of these people, I've seen them at these events, redistricting meetings and stuff like that over the years. So they're pretty excited. It's something that, I saw some stuff on social media say they compared it to like unboxing videos or something where somebody's opening, the new Xbox that comes out after they waited in line or whatever. But it's a very analog process, but it's just kind of like a tangible, representation of the work these people have been doing.
One of the biggest advocates for this reform is former Republican Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, who said that Ohioans, this is from your piece, quote, trampled on the rule of law, end quote, when they ignored 7 rulings from the Ohio Supreme Court declaring the political maps of Ohio used for its 2022 elections as unconstitutionally gerrymandered in favor of the GOP. First of all, obviously interesting that she is a Republican who is condemning Republicans for this. How important has she been to this movement?
I think she brings a lot of gravitas. This is fundamentally, it's a fundraising initiative. Doing these campaigns costs a lot of money, whether it's collecting those signatures. And part of it, besides getting the 713,000 that they got, or it's 730, it's a lot of signatures, but they also have to come from 44 of Ohio's 88 counties. They have to meet a minimum number. So when you're talking about rural areas, you might be going to the Family Dollar, you might be going to high school football games, you might be walking up people's driveways that are 50 feet long with no trespassing signs and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of work to pay that to pay people to do that. Fundamentally is what it ultimately comes down to. And then also there's ads and all that stuff. So this is to say that having somebody like her, I think, helps bring credibility to it. It'll be a good message to say that it's bipartisan, given that she previously was the state's lieutenant governor. She's a former county prosecutor. She's the first she's the first woman to hold Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and lieutenant governor, I believe. Yeah. So it's just, she has a lot of heft. And so it's something that will help the campaign by basically just who she is and kind of what she represents.
She's got the goods, no doubt about that. Who is against this? I've seen a lot of people for it, obviously, but are there people openly advocating against this?
So we haven't seen the emergence of an official anti-amendment campaign, but kind of the spokesperson for the opposition, kind of de facto, has been Matt Huffman. He's the Republican leader of the Ohio Senate. He's from Lima. He might be the next Ohio House Speaker. He's just somebody who's holds a leadership position in the legislature. And Huffman was involved with passing those 2015 and 2018 redistricting measures I talked about. He helped write them. He helped negotiate them with Democrats. And he also oversaw the Republican strategy to use the system to draw the most recent maps. And it's a very aggressive, I would say, partisan strategy. They, without getting into making this like a legal discussion, they used legal tactics to try to win the case in court, which they essentially ultimately did, even though they lost in the Ohio Supreme Court, but they took it to federal court. So what Republicans say, and we'll see, not all of them have come out against this, but they feel that because Ohio's population centers are Democrat, the outlying areas tend to be Republican, that drawing more Democratic districts to make a proportional number of districts kind of that meets the percentages of Republican Democrat votes in statewide elections requires them to make kind of weird looking districts that stretch out from the city and connected to some outlying area. So they kind of describe that as gerrymandering for Democrats. So I think fundamentally, though, Republicans likely will lose seats in Congress if this measure passes. And there are so few competitive districts in Congress nationwide that it just is it's a significant risk for the party nationally. So that's why I think that if they're able to get money to fund ads, kind of attacking this, it will be from national Republican donors who are worried about those implications for Congress. I think that's kind of where, the power that opposes this is going to come from.
It is kind of a tough sell to people at this point, I would imagine. You mentioned Matt Huffman and his spokesperson, you quote in your piece. He said, citizens, not politics. Oh, I'm sorry, I should mention his name, I suppose. His name's, where is he? Oh, John Fortney.
Yeah, don't want to forget John Fortney.
John Fortney. JF, this is JF, quote, citizens, not politicians, should be renamed political outcomes over people. This so-called citizens panel will have zero accountability to the people. When it dissolves, they disappear and Ohioans will be left holding the bag, filled with sprawling gerrymandered districts for radical leftists and nowhere to turn for answers and accountability. Do you think that is going to be an effective message?
So what we've seen when these things have appeared on the ballot in other states is that they're popular with voters. It's a pretty easy sell to say, do you think that politicians should be in charge of drawing these districts, or do you think citizens should? It's just something that on its face is appealing to voters. There's going to be people who view it through a partisan lens, but it's difficult. I mean, I believe this thing is likely to pass unless, something catastrophic happens with fundraising or something like that. But it's kind of an uphill battle for the opposition campaign, basically. So, but the arguments against it would be things of that nature, like you just described. Do you really want more Democrats representing you? This is a state that leans Republican, so maybe that's something that people will work. They're also likely to look at who funds it and attack them and kind of question what their motivations are. We saw Republicans basically in anticipation for this passed a bill that strengthens Ohio law banning foreign political contributions, and they specifically made it a crime for people who are not U.S. citizens to contribute to state ballot campaigns, including through indirect means. So who knows exactly what that means, what it would be like if I were to give you, Mike, $50 and I'm a foreign national, and then you yourself give it to somebody else, and then that third person gives $50 to this campaign. Maybe that would be prohibited by the law, but
I'd be acting as like a little super PAC, wouldn't I?
yeah, people of all, I'm sure your mom told you that growing up, but
No, but why would people have though faith, since we did pass this in 2015 and 2018 versions of this, and it just didn't take? Why should people have faith? What's different about it this time that'll make it actually work?
So what fundamentally is different about this? I mean, there's details, and there's really exciting stuff about budgeting and screening committees and who picks the screening committees and stuff like that. But fundamentally, it replaces the elected officials that currently are in charge of this with a citizens group. There would be 15 people. 5 would have to be Republicans, 5 would have to be Democrats, 5 would have to be independents, and as measured by whether they voted in primary elections, polling a partisan ballot. People would be banned from serving on the committee if they are an elected official, if they're the spouse or direct family member of an elected official, if they've worked in politics, if they've worked as a lobbyist. There's some other criteria like that that's meant to screen out just trying to get around it by getting a partisan in there. So I'm sure there are ways to evade that, but fundamentally it's taking politicians out of the equation and has kind of things in place to try to put in just everyday people.
They've tightened it up considerably, it seems like, and they've tried to think ahead about all of the shenanigans that they might try to attempt to undermine the new gerrymandering law. And hopefully they got it right this time. And speaking as a totally unprincipled Ohioan who is all for this, I really hope that this thing passes for my state.
I'll say it failed in 2012. There's something that was kind of comparable to this, and what happened at that time was that the opposition has just described it as being complicated. Redistricting is something that's sort of difficult to understand if you're not recently a graduate of like a civics class or something like that. But we've seen a shift where, like I said, recently, especially running on this anti-politician messaging, that these things have fared pretty well. So we'll see how this plays out. But this is a big step is just making the ballot itself, and that's kind of we're on the path to that.
That is interesting, though. You're right. I feel like the culture has shifted even since 2012, when the politicians could say to us, they're like, you let us worry about this. The politicians, we know how to handle it. You guys go about your business. And we were just like, all right. And now we're like, no, we're going to have to help. We're going to have to oversee this a little bit now. It seems like that's just the way the culture's gone over the last decade or so.
Yeah, we've like I said, it's become a potent part of our political culture.
All right. Well, hopefully it pays off. Andrew Tobias from Cleveland Plain Dealer, thank you so much for your time and for your effort, and please keep making us smarter.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so we do have some video from a rally that they held on Monday when they dropped off those signatures. As we said, about 731,000 signatures. So you've heard of the statement backing up the Brinks truck. They literally backed up a U-Haul truck when they dropped these off at the Secretary of State's office. So we have some video of that. You can see that here. There was also a big crowd there to celebrate, with a few words from former Ohio Supreme Court Justice Maureen O'Connor. So people who are supporting this initiative were very, very excited to see her. So from here, the next step is signature verification by the state, and then it'll be on the ballot in November, and it'll take a simple majority to then potentially become the latest constitutional amendment here in the state of Ohio.
Getting there, folks, and we only have to hit a 50% threshold, not a 60% threshold, to make that a part of our Constitution because of what you did last year.
That's right. 50% plus one, that simple majority in order for it to pass in November. Something else that you passed last November was Issue 2, related to the legalization of recreational marijuana here in the state of Ohio. That was a citizen-initiated statute, different from an amendment, and those applications opened up in June 7th here in the state of Ohio. They've been rolling into the Division of Cannabis Control, lots of them coming in. Here's an important thing that we need to note, though, because dual-use provisional licenses have been issued for some
so medical and
organizations.
recreational.
Right.
Got it.
They're provisional licenses, though, so these don't allow the sale yet, but it is an important step in the process. So we have a piece for you from NBC Cleveland investigative reporter Lena Lai on the latest here in Northeast Ohio.
At the Forest Dispensary in Perkins Township near Sandusky, Everybody wants to know when.
They're hoping to make history once again after being among Ohio's first medical marijuana dispensaries in 2019. Now close to being among the first in the state to sell recreational marijuana.
The first thing that will happen is an inspection of this facility to make sure it meets all the specifications. They'll go through our SOPs, etc. And then we'll have a meeting with the department, and from there we expect that we'll be able to take all medical patients and non-medical patients.
So far, 31 Ohio medical marijuana dispensaries received a provisional dual-use license for recreational sales. 5 are in Northeast Ohio. Along with the Forest, there's Italian Herbs in Ashtabula, Cream Apothecary in Lorain, Greenleaf Apothecary in Akron, and the Green Goat in Canton. These are now in the home stretch before recreational sales can begin. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers in the Ohio General Assembly are proposing amendments to change Ohio's marijuana law known as Issue 2. Now, almost 8 months later, the start of legal sales is only a best guess.
Best guess, 1 to 2 weeks. We don't have a time frame on it because there are 225 applicants that are trying to convert, and it takes time to get through all those applications.
Thank you very much, Lena Lai. Now, we have been in touch with the Ohio Division of Cannabis Control, so they update these numbers every Friday afternoon. So these numbers are from Friday, June 28th, as of 12 p.m.
243 applications submitted to convert active medical marijuana licensees to dual-use cannabis licensees.
There have been 190 what's called 10B dispensary applications submitted. So these are additional dispensary licenses that were authorized by the statute that passed last November.
The division has notified 127 facilities that they have qualified for a provisional license. Congratulations to you.
That includes 6 testing labs, 28 cultivators, 28 processors, and 65 dispensaries.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, this legalized statewide marijuana thing sounds pretty sweet. How could I get involved in this hot new economy?
Yeah, if you're interested in making money, it's probably something that you're thinking about right now. Well, you can actually get a certificate in this arena in 5 different categories, 5 different tracks related to cannabis. And this is with the help of an organization called Green Flower and Kent State University.
Go Flashes, my alma mater, doing it right. Fashion and marijuana, those are our big 2 right now.
So I got to talk with the CEO of Green Flower. Here's what he had to say about the program. All right, I'm here with Max Simon now, the CEO of Green Flower. Thank you for being with us here on Ohio Has Issues.
Thrilled to be with you.
Now, you've been doing what you're doing for a long time, but it's coming here to Northeast Ohio very soon at Kent State University. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do at Green Flower?
Yeah, we produce trusted cannabis curriculum that helps people enter and succeed in this emerging cannabis industry. And then we partner with amazing institutions like Kent State to allow them to offer these programs 100% online and available now.
And this is something that students are able to start enrolling in now or very soon at Kent State?
That's right. Enrollment is open right now for the next set of classes that begin in September.
Okay, and what is the goal of this course? Are you getting university credit hours for this? What happens when a student completes the course?
So there are 5 different programs, actually. There's a cannabis business program, a cannabis agriculture program, a cannabis medicine program, a cannabis compliance program, and a cannabis healthcare program. And these programs are offered to allow people to enter different sectors of the industry. And so if you're interested in growing, you take the cultivation program. If you're interested in business, you take the business program. If you're interested in medicine, you take the medicine program.
Interesting. Okay. And is Kent State University the first Ohio school that you're entering? Or are you in other Ohio schools?
Yep, absolutely. It's the first university in the state.
Wow. Okay. Obviously, that makes sense because we're just in a time here in Ohio when we're seeing the legalization of recreational use marijuana. And what other states are you in? Can you tell me ballpark how many states you're in across the country?
We're actually in 25 other states. So that includes everything from Louisiana with LSU to Syracuse in New York to University of Arizona in Arizona. So we've been able to bring this trusted cannabis education to really trusted higher education institutions around the country.
And with 5 different programs that you can go into with your coursework, how extensive is that? Is it 5 different classes? Is it a track? Is this a major that's going to be available at Kent State University?
So these are all 100% online programs. They take about 6 months to complete, and they are considered continuing education certificate programs. So when you complete the program, you do get a certificate from Kent State, but they're non-credit, and they're mostly used as a way to help people develop their careers, oftentimes for working adults.
Oh, okay. So kind of like a post grad kind of extra opportunity to get more education through Kent State.
Yeah, these professional development certificates have become really popular in the technology world. You see them, people get to them in coding boot camps, or even in the wine or beer world, you'll see certifications. And so this is very similar to that, where this is a brand new industry. People don't know a lot about it. They need training, they need guidance, they need expertise, and the credential gives you something to go to employers or investors with and demonstrate that you were backed by a reputable institution.
Is this something that you've had any kind of difficulty with when it comes to the compliance track, because it is the recreational aspect of it in Ohio so very new?
The beautiful thing about education is that we are not touching the plant. We're not interacting with the plant. We are providing workforce development education. And because of that, it's actually been really well embraced by the school and the state. And we have permission to bring this to anybody who's interested in this industry.
Now, one more question for you here. Is this a green flower adjunct instructor that's teaching this, or is this a Kent State professor? How does that work?
So each individual course is actually comprised of sometimes 30, 40, 50 different experts that are bringing their subject matter expertise to that individual area. So for example, in the agriculture program, you learn from legendary cultivators and breeders and geneticists and people who have this long cannabis background to be able to make sure that students are getting the most accurate, the most up-to-date, and the most valuable information to really play a leadership role in this new industry.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question you may or may not know the answer to, but I'm very interested. Obviously, something we talk about all the time in the entire country is student loans and financing for education. So if somebody is interested in this at Kent State University, is this something you can use financial aid for, or is this something completely private and separate from that?
Because cannabis is still a Schedule I substance, it actually means that it's not entitled for federal funding at this point. It's something that we're hoping changes in the future. But we do offer payment plans. And furthermore, the programs are very affordable. If you look at the world of higher education, these programs are oftentimes a tenth of the cost of what you would pay for in those kinds of environments. So very affordable. They have plenty of flexible payment plans to make this easy for people to get started with today.
The 6 months that you were talking about, would that encompass all of those courses you described, or just a track?
Yeah, each program is 6 months. So the cultivation program is 6 months, the business program is 6 months, medical program is 6 months. We do often have students that will take more than one program at a time, and they'll just kind of go through them concurrently. But no, each individual program is 6 months in length.
Okay, that's another good follow-up question I'd like to ask now. Could you take, presumably, if you had a lot of free time, I know free time can be hard to come by for people, could you take all of the tracks at one time, or do you need to take them in a certain order if you do want to take more than one track?
I don't know if we've had somebody take more than 2 at a time, but we have had a lot of people take 2 at a time. And that's because studying cannabis is actually a tremendously fun experience. It's surprising how much there is to learn and how much there is to understand. Definitely changes your perception and stigma around these things when you learn more about the science and the history of it. So it's a ton of fun to study, but it does take, anywhere between 5 to 8 hours a week or so of time to study in any individual program. So if you were to do 2, you'd have to double that in commitment.
All right. Do you have to be enrolled? Now, this, I promise, is my final question for you. Do you have to be enrolled at Kent State University in order to get into the program?
I'm happy to say that anybody, no matter whether you're a Kent State alumni, a student, whether you're, in your developing years or you're in your more mature years, this program is available to anybody who is accessible to take it online.
All right, Max, thank you very much for your time with us and for breaking this down. We appreciate you being with us here on Ohio Has Issues.
It was really nice to be with you, and I hope we've inspired some more people to get involved in cannabis education.
I would not be shocked if you haven't sparked some interest. Thank you, Max. Thank you very much to Max Simon, CEO of Green Flower, for taking time to talk with us about the program.
Fascinating new world we live in, isn't it? Okay, this is the statement from Kent. Recognizing the potential of this emerging field, Kent State decided to incorporate cannabis education into our lifelong learning portfolio. This decision aligns with our commitment to offer learning experiences that are relevant and valuable to Ohio's workforce, as there is a significant demand for credible, trusted information about the cannabis industry. That is from Eric Mansfield, Assistant Vice President, Content and Strategy, Kent State University. Go Flashes.
Yeah, so there you go. If you're interested, you can check that out. And like you said, you don't have to be a student to be involved. No financial aid available for you, though. That's that little federal hiccup that we got to figure out.
That's how they get you. Hey, thanks for watching Ohio Has Issues, everybody. Have a splendid 4th.
Celebrate and be safe so that you can be back with us next week. See you next week.